Hello and welcome to the Mac and Mac College Football Program, presented weekly right here on the Grueling Truth Network. My name is Sean McCormick. Normally my son Ryne McCormick is with me, but today he's a little under the weather. In fact, he can barely speak. So we're going to be, I'm going to be flying solo here, and we're going to get it started. Lots of college football, actually some good games within some top teams throughout the nation. Just looking at it, you're looking at Florida State and Louisville, Bama, Ole Miss, Michigan State, Notre Dame. We'll be talking about that one. One of the bigger contests as well is number 3 Ohio State at number 14 Oklahoma. And you have Michigan. Michigan kind of being the weak sister this week. As for the third straight week, they've got probably a shoe-in win going against Colorado, but we're going to discuss that as well. Talking about the games from last week, I know that Ryne was shooting for Penn State. I shot for Pitt. Pitt ended up winning. Didn't think it was going to be such a high-scoring game. Frankly, Pat Narduzzi surprised. That kind of surprised me because I thought it was going to be a little bit lower scoring with his defensive talk. And speaking of Narduzzi, came from Michigan State, and Michigan State's got a big game traveling to South Bend against number 18 Notre Dame. Now, when you think about Notre Dame and Michigan State, they've met 77 times so far. Probably the most notoriety they receive is, of course, 1966, when you're talking Michigan State, number 2, versus Notre Dame, number 1, all the way back there, when I was just a wee lad of 6 years old. We're going to talk about a little bit about that. Got a little bit of nostalgia also when you're thinking of Colorado and Michigan. And you're listening to the Grueling Truth Network, Mac and Mac's College Football Weekly Program. I'm Sean McCormick, going solo this week. Can't forget when we're talking, and we're going to kick it off with the Michigan hosting Colorado. 20 years ago, this would be a primetime matchup. Not so much this year. You have Michigan taking on Hawaii, Central Florida, and now the Buffaloes. Are we going to the bakery and getting some cupcakes for Jim Harbaugh? I think so. History has these two teams in one heck of a Hail Mary. The time was 1994. Throw some names out there for you. Cordell Stewart, Michael Westbrook. Last second, all the way 64-yard touchdown. Ended up being a 1-point victory for the Buffaloes. Not this time. Not this time at all. Michigan is going to shellac Colorado. I'm going to throw it out there. Going to be about a 30-point win. I'm looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 52-20. Moving along, looking at number 1, Alabama. Let's take a look there. This game could be closer than you think. It could not be as well. Number 19, Ole Miss, hosting Bama. Got a little bit on their side. The Rebels, 2014, Ole Miss, a 23-17 winner. Then last year, that kind of a shocker, Ole Miss topping them 43-37. Nick Saban, he's got questions. He's been asked all week about revenge, motivation, emotions. Those questions rifled through his media conference all week. Also, he had to face up and kind of talk a little bit about Lane Kiffin and that tiff that many saw, whether live or replayed on the national networks all over the place. Really lit into him. Was it just distraction or just a head coach getting to the point with an assistant? I think they're going to be fine. They're just a little bit in the heat of the moment discussion there. This is a bigger game for Ole Miss. Got to think that way. Still stinging is the meltdown versus Florida State a couple of weeks ago. Something to consider here. The Florida State defense is very similar scheme-wise as the Alabama defense. And we know what FSU did to Ole Miss on that second half. It's not a must-win for Alabama, but consider this Bama, in addition to being on the road this weekend, later on through the season, they're going to take on Arkansas. Arkansas, an upset winner last week. They're going to take on Tennessee and LSU all later on their schedule, and it's all on the road. Got to go with Bama on this one, 10-plus points. I'm going to say Alabama 31-20. You're listening to the Grueling Truth Network and Mac and Mac's college football program. Sean McCormick sitting in with you. Florida State, the number 2 ranked Seminoles, are at number 10 Louisville. Cardinals and Seminoles, one of the season's early and good ACC matchups. Odds makers are showing no respect for Louisville. Noles are 2.5-point favorites, even though they are on the road. Not really a surprise. FSU has won both games versus the Cards since Louisville joined the ACC. Quarterback Lamar Jackson, double-edged sword on offense for Louisville. He benefit, the Cards have been benefiting the past couple weeks from his legs and arm equally. Is Jackson for real? Well, how about this? Understand. Louisville played Charlotte and Syracuse, but you've got Jackson totaling over 1,000 yards, 1,015 to be exact, 13 touchdowns responsible for. Can FSU stop him from the start? I don't want to let Louisville jump out as Ole Miss did. I don't think Jimbo Fisher is going to want to see another Ole Miss-type first half performance from that defense. Speaking of defense, DeMarcus Walker, how do you keep him off the quarterback? 4.5 sacks against Ole Miss, that in the second half alone. I look for it to be a little bit of a squeaker. 3.5 quarters, FSU takes off, wins by 7. Let's call it a 27-20 victory for Florida State. One of the better games this weekend, third-ranked Ohio State, the Buckeyes traveling to Norman, Oklahoma, taking on the Sooners, number 14th-ranked Oklahoma. First real test for Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes this year. Granted, Bowling Green, Tulsa, not showing them much. They were a little sluggish against Tulsa in the first half and still managed to total 125 total points throughout those first 2 games. Oklahoma is not BG or Tulsa. It's been a long time since these two teams met. Talked a little bit about a nostalgic week. Last time these two teams met was actually in 1983. Yeah. Can Malik Hooker, the Ohio State safety, add to his FBS interception lead? He's got 3. Baker Mayfield, quarterback, versus the Buckeyes D. Should be a good one. Should be a tight one. All week long, the volume has been pumping up to simulate the Norman, Oklahoma crowd noise during all of the Ohio State practices. The loss in week 1 is Houston by the Sooners. That looms large right there. That puts the onus on Bob Stoops and Oklahoma. It's Stoops versus Urban Meyer. Should be a good one. Let's call it Ohio State by 3, 27-24. And rounding out the top games for this week, number 12, Michigan State, number 18, Notre Dame. As I mentioned before, I was only 6 years old. I can actually recall watching this on a black and white television. 1966, number 1 Notre Dame versus number 2 Michigan State. Throw some names out here for you. Terry Hanratty was the Irish quarterback. Well, for a little bit of the first quarter. I don't personally remember this, but it was Bubba Smith knocking him out of the game. Coaches, Ara Parsegian versus Duffy Daugherty. Changed now, 50 years later. It is Brian Kelly versus Mark D'Antonio. The Irish, redeeming themselves against Nevada a bit after that tough double overtime loss to Texas in the opening week. Michigan State had a bye last week. You think that was not really sponsored by D'Antonio? Plenty of time to fix that lackluster Week 1 win over Furman. Michigan State, the Spartans, 10 penalties, just not looking that well. I think you're going to see a lot better Michigan State team. D'Antonio's got his crew ready to go. And I think that they're saying that anywhere from 10 to 15,000 Sparty fans are going to be in attendance at South Bend. And I think they're going to go home smiling. Let's call it Michigan State 20, Notre Dame 13. And that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Mac and Mac College Football Program. I'm Sean McCormick. Have a great one.